I bought the house in secret, and I told myself it was not because I was ashamed. It was because I was tired. Tired of explaining my choices. Tired of sharing things that were never returned to me. So when I signed the papers alone, sitting in a quiet office with a pen that felt heavier than it should, I did not smile. I just breathed. I am a Black woman in my late 40s, and for most of my life, I have been the strong one, the one who listens, the one who helps, the one who figures things out when everyone else falls apart. My family has always leaned on me, and I never pushed back. I thought love meant carrying weight without complaint. I lived with my mother longer than I planned, not because I had nowhere to go, but because she needed help. My brother came and went, always with big plans and short patience. His wife moved through the family like she already belonged everywhere. I told myself it was fine. I told myself I did not mind. But at night, when the house got quiet, I felt small, like I was visiting a life that did not belong to me anymore. So I started saving, quietly, carefully. I did not tell anyone, not even my best friend. Some dreams need silence to survive. The house was modest, a small porch, 2 bedrooms, a kitchen that caught the morning light just right. When I walked through it the first time, I imagined peace, coffee without conversation, silence that did not feel lonely, a place where I could finally put my purse down and rest. When I told my mother later that week, I kept my voice soft. I bought a place, I said, just something for myself. She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. That's nice, she said, and then she asked where it was. I answered, but something inside me tightened. My brother did not call. His wife sent a short message. Oh, nice. That was it. I moved slowly. I wanted to enjoy every step. I painted the walls, bought 1 chair, 1 small table. I was building a life that finally felt like mine. Then one afternoon I came by earlier than planned. The sky was gray and the street was quiet. As I walked up to the door, I heard voices inside. Laughter. Familiar. Comfortable. I paused. My keys stayed in my hand. Through the open doorway, I saw my mother standing in my kitchen. She was pointing at the cabinets. My brother's wife stood beside her, smiling wide. A woman I did not know followed them, nodding like she was inspecting something. This room would be perfect, my mother said, if you put a table right here. They had not seen me yet. I stood there, breathing slow. Not angry, just still. And in that moment, I realized something important. The house I bought in secret was already being shared. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Your support helps these real-life stories reach others who may need them. I did not step inside right away. I stood there at the door, listening. My mother's voice sounded warm, proud even, like she was showing off something that belonged to all of us. My brother's wife laughed softly, the kind of laugh people use when they already feel comfortable. I held my keys tighter, reminding myself to stay calm. When I finally walked in, the room went quiet. My mother turned first. Her smile froze for just a second before returning. "Oh, you're here early," she said, like nothing was wrong. My brother's wife looked surprised, then quickly relaxed. "This place is really nice," she said. "Your mom was just showing us around." I nodded and forced a small smile. Inside, something shifted. I had not invited them, but no one asked if it was okay. We stood in the kitchen talking about nothing important. The weather, the paint color, the neighborhood. I answered politely, but my chest felt tight. It was my house, yet I felt like a guest. After they left, my mother stayed behind. She walked from room to room slowly, touching the walls like she was memorizing them. "You did good," she said. "This is a blessing." I waited for her to say more. She did not. Over the next few weeks, small things began to happen. My mother would mention the house to people I had never told. My brother's wife started asking questions. "How much space is in the back?" Is there room for kids to play? Each question sounded innocent, but together they felt heavy. One afternoon, my brother called. "I heard you got a place," he said. His tone was casual but familiar. "Yeah, it's small, but it's mine." He laughed. "Well, family is family," he said. "You know how that goes." I did know. Too well. Sometimes my mother would suggest changes. "You could turn that second room into something more useful," she said. "For who?" I asked gently. She waved her hand. "I'm just thinking out loud." At night, alone in my house, I sat in the quiet and tried to understand why I felt uneasy. Nothing bad had happened. No one had asked to move in. No one had said anything wrong, but I felt it coming. That familiar feeling of being slowly pushed aside in my own life, of watching my boundaries soften because everyone else expected them to. I realized then that buying the house was only the first step. Keeping it mine would be harder, because the people I loved did not see lines the way I did. They saw opportunity. They saw access. And I wondered how long it would be before someone said it out loud, before someone decided my quiet dream was meant to be shared. I stood in the kitchen that night, lights off, listening to the rain tap against the window, and for the first time I asked myself a hard question. What happens when protecting your peace means disappointing your family? If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Your support helps these real-life stories reach others who may need them. After that night, I started paying closer attention, not because I wanted to find problems, but because my heart kept warning me. Sometimes our spirits notice things long before our minds are ready to admit them, and mine was restless. My mother began stopping by more often. She never called first. She would knock softly, already smiling, like she belonged there. "I was in the area," she would say. I always stepped aside and let her in. She would walk through the house like it was familiar now. She knew where the cups were. She commented on the furniture. Sometimes she would sit at the table and sigh, the way she used to do at her own place. I told myself I was imagining things. Then my brother's wife started coming too. At first, she came with my mother. Later, she came alone. She would bring coffee or a small plant and act like she was doing me a favor. "This would look cute in the living room," she said once, setting it down without asking. We talked politely. She asked about my job, my plans, my weekends, but her eyes moved around the house while I spoke, like she was measuring something, like she was already thinking ahead. One afternoon, she laughed and said, "You're lucky you don't have kids. You have so much space." She said it lightly, like a joke, but it sat wrong in my chest. I smiled anyway. My brother called more often too. He asked about the neighborhood, the schools, the cost of utilities. "Just curious," he said each time. I answered briefly, trying not to sound guarded. At night, I replayed these moments in my mind. None of them were loud, none of them were cruel, but together they formed a weight I could not ignore. I started locking the door more often. I began leaving my phone face down when messages came in. I hated feeling this way. I did not want to be suspicious of my own family. One evening, my mother sat across from me in the kitchen. She stirred her tea slowly and said, "This house feels warm, like it's meant for togetherness." I looked at her, choosing my words carefully. "I wanted it to be peaceful," I said. She nodded, but said nothing. That silence said more than words ever could. I realized then that no one had asked me what I wanted. They talked around it, they hinted, they imagined, but they never asked. And I understood something painful and clear. My family did not see my house as a boundary. They saw it as an extension of themselves, something to use, adjust, and grow into when it suited them. That night, I sat alone in the living room, lights low, listening to the clock tick. I thought about all the times I had stayed quiet to keep peace, all the times I had made room for others in my life. I wondered how much space I had left for myself. The moment came on an ordinary afternoon. No raised voices, no slammed doors, just a conversation that changed everything. My mother called and said she was stopping by with my brother and his wife. She did not ask, she told me. I said, okay, even though my stomach tightened the second I hung up. They arrived together, smiling, carrying the comfort of people who already felt at home. We sat in the living room. The air felt thick, like the house was listening. My brother leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. His wife sat close to him, nodding before anyone even spoke. My mother cleared her throat. "We've been talking," she said softly. I waited. She looked at me with that familiar expression, the one that mixed love with expectation. "You know your brother has been struggling," she continued. "He and his wife just need a little time to get back on their feet." I felt my heart slow down, not race, slow, like it already knew what was coming. My brother smiled, like he was asking a favor. "It wouldn't be forever," he said, "just until things settle." His wife reached for his hand and added, "Family helps family." I sat very still. The room felt smaller. This house I had dreamed of, saved for, protected in silence, was suddenly being offered without my permission. I spoke carefully. "I bought this house for peace," I said, "for my own space." My voice stayed calm, even as my chest tightened. My mother sighed. "You're alone," she said gently. "You don't need all this space." Her words were not meant to hurt, but they did. My brother shifted in his seat. "You've always been strong," he said. "You can handle a little inconvenience." I looked at him and realized something painful. They had already decided. I thought about all the years I had helped, all the times I had adjusted my life to fit theirs. I had thought this house would be different, that I would finally choose myself. "I'm not saying yes," I said quietly. The room went silent. My brother's wife's smile faded. My mother looked surprised, almost offended. "Well," she said after a moment, "we thought you'd understand." I did understand. I understood exactly how this worked. Understanding just did not mean agreeing anymore. They left shortly after. No hugs, no warmth, just quiet disappointment trailing behind them like a shadow. When the door closed, I stood there alone. My hands were shaking, not from fear, from standing my ground for the first time. That night, I sat on the floor of my living room, back against the wall. I felt sad, but I also felt something new, strength. Because saying no did not make me cruel, it made me honest. If this story speaks to your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Your support helps real-life stories like this reach the people who need them most. After that day, everything changed, even though no one said it out loud. There were no arguments, no angry calls, just distance, the kind that settles in quietly and stays. My mother stopped coming by. Days passed, then weeks. When she did call, her voice sounded careful, like she was choosing each word. She asked how I was, but she did not really listen to the answer. I could hear the disappointment sitting between us. My brother did not call at all, not to check on me, not to ask how the house was. His wife unfollowed me on social media. It was small, but it hurt more than I expected. I moved through my days slowly. I went to work, I came home, I sat in the quiet I had once wanted so badly. But now the silence felt heavier, filled with what had been lost. At night, I questioned myself. Had I been selfish? Had I misunderstood them? I replayed the conversation over and over, looking for a softer way I could have said no, but every version still ended the same. One afternoon, my mother finally came by. She stood at the door instead of walking in. "I just wanted to see you," she said. I stepped aside and let her enter. She sat on the couch, hands folded in her lap. "This house feels different now," she said quietly. I nodded. "It does," I replied. I did not explain further. She looked around, then back at me. "You know," she said, "family shouldn't turn their backs on each other." Her words were gentle, but they carried weight. I took a deep breath. "I didn't turn my back," I said softly. "I just stood still." She did not answer. She left soon after, her hug brief and distant. I stood at the window and watched her walk away, feeling both strong and sad. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea. The rain tapped lightly against the glass. I thought about all the times I had chosen comfort for others over truth for myself. This time, I had chosen differently. I realized something important. Boundaries do not always bring peace right away. Sometimes they bring loss. Sometimes they show you who was benefiting from your silence. I missed my family, but I did not miss feeling invisible. As I turned off the lights and walked to bed, I placed my hand against the wall. This house still felt like mine, not because it was quiet, but because I had finally claimed it. And for the first time in a long while, I fell asleep without regret. Time passed, and the quiet slowly changed its shape. It stopped feeling like punishment and started feeling like space. Not empty space, but breathing room. I began to settle into my routines, cooking simple meals, sitting on the porch in the evenings, letting my thoughts come and go without rushing them away. Then one evening, my phone rang. It was my mother. Her voice sounded tired, softer than usual. "Can I come by?" she asked. This time, she waited for my answer. "Yes," I said. She arrived just after sunset. The house was dim, lit by one lamp in the corner. She stood in the doorway for a moment, like she was unsure of her place. I stepped aside and let her in. We sat at the kitchen table. No small talk, just the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the sound of distant traffic. Finally, she sighed. "They're not doing well," she said. I knew who she meant. They thought this house would solve a lot of things. Her eyes stayed on the table. I listened. I did not interrupt. She told me about arguments, about money troubles, about the pressure my brother felt. As she spoke, I realized something painful and clear. They had seen my home as a solution, not a sanctuary. "I shouldn't have assumed," my mother said finally. Her voice cracked. "I raised you to give, and I forgot to teach them how to stop taking." The words settled between us. They were heavy, but honest. "I love them," I said quietly, "but I love myself, too." My hands rested flat on the table. They were steady. She nodded. "I see that now," she said. Her eyes lifted to mine, and for the first time in a long while, there was no expectation in them, just understanding. When she left that night, her hug lingered a little longer. It was not a full repair, but it was a beginning. Later, alone in my living room, I thought about how long it had taken for the truth to surface, how sometimes people only understand boundaries after they push against them and feel the wall. I did not feel proud. I felt calm, like I had finally stopped explaining myself to people who were not listening. This house was still quiet, but now the quiet felt earned. I turned off the lights and stood by the window for a moment. The street was still, the sky was clear, and for the first time, I felt at home in more ways than one. If this story is speaking to you, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Your support helps these real-life stories reach hearts that need them. After that night, something inside me shifted. Not in a loud way, not all at once, but gently. like a door finally closing on a draft that had been blowing through my life for years. My mother called more often now, not to suggest, not to hint, just to ask how I was doing. Sometimes we talked about simple things, recipes, old memories, the weather. It felt different, lighter, like she was meeting me where I stood instead of where she wanted me to be. My brother stayed distant. I heard about him through my mother, small updates passed carefully. He was still struggling, still trying to find his footing. I felt concern, but I did not feel guilt anymore. That surprised me. I realized how much of my life I had spent apologizing without words, apologizing for having needs, for wanting space, for choosing myself. I had called it kindness, but it was fear of disappointing people I loved. I began to change small habits. I stopped answering my phone right away. I said no without long explanations. When I did help, it was because I wanted to, not because I felt cornered. The house started to reflect that change. I added shelves, hung photos I loved. I played music while cooking and let it fill the rooms. The space felt alive now, not just quiet. One afternoon, my brother's wife sent me a message. It was short. "I hope you're doing well." I stared at it for a long time before replying. "Thank you," I wrote back. Nothing more, nothing less. I understood then that peace does not always look like closeness. Sometimes it looks like respectful distance. Sometimes love survives better with space around it. At night, I sat on the porch and watched the sun go down. Neighbors walked by. Someone laughed down the street. Life moved on, steady and ordinary. I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who believed love meant sacrifice without limits. I wished I could sit beside her and tell her this: you are allowed to belong to yourself. The house stood quietly behind me, solid and patient. It had held my doubts, my fear, my strength. It had watched me learn who I was without everyone else's expectations. And in that moment, I understood something deeply. This was never just about a house. It was about learning to live without apologies. I stood up and went inside, closing the door gently behind me, not to shut anyone out, but to finally stand fully within my own life. These days, the house feels settled. Not perfect, not untouched, but lived in. The walls carry quiet memories now, not tension. I wake up in the mornings without bracing myself for anyone else's needs. My mother still visits, but she calls first. When she comes, she sits and listens. Sometimes we talk about the past, sometimes about nothing at all. There's an understanding between us now, soft but steady. She sees me differently, not as the strong one who will always bend, but as a woman who knows where she stands. My brother and his wife are still working through their own lives. We are not as close as we once were, and I have accepted that. Love does not always mean daily contact. Sometimes it means wishing someone well from a distance and trusting them to find their own way. I have learned to enjoy my own company. I cook meals slowly. I sit with my thoughts instead of running from them. I let the quiet teach me what I need to hear. Some evenings I walk through the house and place my hand on the door frames, the walls, the windows, not out of fear they will be taken from me, but out of gratitude. This space held me while I learned how to hold myself. I no longer feel the need to explain why I made the choices I did. The people who truly care do not ask me to, and the ones who do are teaching me who they are. If I could share one thing with anyone listening, it would be this: choosing yourself does not mean you stop loving others. It means you stop disappearing. I spent many years believing my worth came from how much I gave. Now I know it comes from knowing when to stop, from honoring my limits, from trusting my voice, even when it trembles. This house was the first promise I kept to myself, and I intend to keep it. As I close the door each night, I do it gently, not out of fear, but out of care for the life I am finally living. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Your support helps these real-life stories reach others who may need this reminder today.